everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name's Sterling. I'm your host. So, in an effort to make Canadians believe that the Liberal Party is trying to do a lot with the military, as trying to improve it and not leave it in its aged situation with very few resources and our men and women going off to combat theaters without the appropriate equipment, there has been a lot of announcements in recent days and recent weeks around the military. Our ranking general, Ayer is his name, he announced his retirement in January of this year, and last week the Prime Minister finally got around to naming his replacement. Now, there is no secret in the fact that Canada's military can't have any, it's not getting any recruitment, it's got no retention, it's got very few modern equipments, and for the size of this country, something needs to be done, and I don't believe that anything that the Liberals are doing is anywhere near up to snuff. However, before I get into it, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share this channel with all of your socials. I really come up against a lot of the censorship bills in Canada because I guess the powers that be don't like necessarily what I have to say or how I say it. And they turn me down on the algorithm pretty harshly, pretty sharply. So any assistance that you want to give me, I have memberships, I have a GoFundMe. Any assistance that you want to give me, I appreciate. Okay, so last week, the week before, the Prime Minister announced the upcoming appointment of the new Chief of Defence Staff. Oh, July 3rd. So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today announced the upcoming appointment of Lieutenant General Jenny Carrigan, currently Chief, Professional Conduct and Culture, National Defence, as the Chief of Defence Staff. She will be promoted to the rank of General and replace the current Chief of Defence Staff, General Wayne Eyre, who is retiring from the Canadian Armed Forces. Lieutenant General Carrigan will be the first woman in our country's history to lead the Canadian CAF, the Canadian Armed Forces. Her military career in service of Canada and Canadians spans over 35 years, includes commanding 2 combat engineer regiments and the 2nd Canadian Division, where she led more than 10,000 soldiers in a spearhead crisis operation flood relief efforts in Quebec. First of all, let me be clear. I believe wholeheartedly in using the military for combat relief or disaster relief. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They are supposed to be, in theory, when Canada first started doing it back in the 80s, strong, determined, they will do as they're told, they'll be organized, they have equipment. However, you would think in your mind, oh, this is great, right? Lieutenant General Carrigan is going to be an awesome, combat engineer is another thing that I 100% agree with. I understand, because I have a strong understanding of military history and whatnot, that the Roman soldier, the legionnaire that took over most of Europe and at the time most of the known world, was actually a combat engineer. They could arrive on site, repair their equipment, build fortifications, build bridges, build complex machinery. They could bring water in, which is something that really was lost when their empire sort of collapsed. And I 100% wholeheartedly agree that every single solitary soldier that we have should be a combat engineer. Now, I did a report on it a couple of months back, the state of the military and my position on the military. And I swear to you, I lost 50 subscribers from that one report, but I'm not going to pander. So this General Carrigan is currently the Chief Professional Conduct and Culture. So you think, oh, look, she's been in Afghanistan. She's looked after all of these different combat roles in the time when the military culture in Canada is at a breaking point and the world is at a boiling on a simmer, at least. You would think that the Prime Minister, with 6 months to make his choices, would pick somebody who's hard-nosed and ready to take on these very, very complex issues. So, Lieutenant General Carrigan's page, which is CMMM, SC, MSM, and CD, Lieutenant General Jenny Carrigan's military career in service of Canada and Canadians spans over 35 years. She was promoted to her current rank in 2001 and has served for the past 3 years as Chief Professional Conduct and Culture, National Defence. So, her largest claim to fame in the last 3 years during all of the problems that have been going on in the world is to ensure that we are polite to one another in the military. I hope she's qualified. I hope she's not a political appointment so that Prime Minister Trudeau can say, oh, look, I appointed a woman to be because this person is now the second most highest ranking. She's the highest ranking military officer, and the chief of staff in Canada, of course, is the Governor General. So the Governor General will be relying heavily on this individual should Canada end up in any kind of a conflict, that when we're in NATO, Trudeau keeps talking about is right around the corner, and apparently Russia's going to come spewing over the Arctic Circle any second now, and if not Russia, then troops are going to come spilling out of Greenland. Who knows? I do understand that in any of these kinds of situations, and in a time when Prime Minister Trudeau was in Washington, D.C., talking about how climate change is the number one threat to our security, that this individual who is looking after whether or not people are nice to each other in the army and that people don't say anything that might hurt the feelings of another soldier is qualified. General Kerrigan is the person on the cover on the thumbnail. So Justin Trudeau Forum went to Washington, D.C., NATO, and after he said all of how the environment is the worst to our security issue, he's now promised $500 million more to aid Ukraine as part of a NATO package. There's a $59 billion aid package from NATO's 32 member countries that will be delivered within the next year to help Ukraine in its war with Vladimir Putin's Russia. And here I would have thought that they were just giving it so that they could clean up the carbon, right? I mean, if climate change is the number one threat to the security of NATO, should we not be worried about how much carbon those diesel engines and those tanks are spewing out? Should we not be talking about what kind of fuel is going into those drones that they're firing into Russia? Is that not something that we should be focused on? $59 billion more, 500 million of which is Canada's coming from Canadian taxpayers. Canada is pledging $500 million in fresh military aid to Ukraine as part of a new package of support agreed to at the NATO summit that the United States will give a war-torn nation well-lit bridge to join the alliance, which I'll talk about in a different video. A Canadian government official confirmed to reporters at the North Atlantic Treaty Organization summit on Wednesday that Ottawa will send the money to Ukraine over the next year and also take command of NATO training program for Ukrainian pilots to fly newly delivered F-16 fighter jets. Those F-16 fighter jets that Canada has been waiting for years have managed to make it to Ukraine in no time at all. And Canada is going to go over there and train Ukrainians how to fly them and not train Canadians how to fly them, because let's be straightforward, we didn't get them. We got bumped out of line. I don't agree. I just think that we should be building all of our stuff inside of Canada. I don't care if we're throwing paper airplanes at it. It should be saying made in Canada. I don't like the idea that Canadians are relying on the United States of America for so much of its security in the world that we're living in, with people crossing border all the time, not being kept track of by the immigration minister. I mean, anybody who's familiar with the Tet Offensive understands the ramifications of such a thing. Should you be looking at it from a military strategic standpoint, which in this particular conversation, I am. Now, we're going to be over there training pilots how to fly American jets on jets that we were supposed to be buying from the Americans over years ago, but we have yet to receive and yet to pay for. 500 million more tax dollars going to a war zone. And what I can't understand is, why are we sending that money when that money is needed so if it's $59 billion, how can $500 million make that much of a difference? Why are we sending money there? Is this some kind of a scheme? I don't know. You tell me what you think down in the comments. All right, in keeping with the theme of this particular episode, we're going to talk about submarines that Justin Trudeau is promising NATO that we will build. Now, appreciate that. Canada confirms plans to replace the submarine fleet at NATO. The timing of the announcement could be an attempt to blunt criticism of Ottawa's defense spending. There's no denying that it is absolutely an attempt to blunt the criticism of Ottawa's defense spending. Every time he turns around, he's trying to mention how the Conservatives spent last back 10 years ago. However, Justin Trudeau is spending money on all kinds of things. Why not our defense? because nobody is joining Canadian military, because nobody wants to participate in the wokeness of the Canadian military, because people that are joining the Canadian military understand that they're going up against armies that are not woke. Is that the reason that he's all of a sudden pushing it, or is it that he's just hoping that Ottawa or NATO will like him more? Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't care what his reasons are, in the sense that as long as it gets those submarines here. But we keep promising that we're going to be building military equipment. We keep promising Canadians that we're going to be buying it. And really, there are islands in the Caribbean that are better armed than Canada is. That's what it seems like anyway. I feel like one of the reasons that got this channel launched off the ground for me was that Canadian soldiers were in Latvia with not the right equipment. They were in Latvia with Canadian-made equipment, like they were in Latvia with the Dutch. The Dutch were using Canadian-made equipment that the Canadians themselves did not have, and the Prime Minister and the Governor General and the Chief of Staff sent them to Latvia without even a mess, without even a food, like a way to feed them. They had to run around the country putting it on their credit card. So him saying that he's going to build some submarines and actually getting them built is kind of like spread out in my mind. However, if we're going to build them, that's great. What I believe we should be doing is building them 100% Canadian. I don't want to buy them from somewhere else. Let's see what he says. Canada definitely plans to move forward with the purchase of new submarines, the federal government announced on the margins of the NATO summit on Wednesday. Up to now, the government has spoken only about the possibility of replacing the aging Victoria-class boats. But in the face of mounting criticism of Canada's defense spending by its allies, notably the United States, Ottawa has given the proposal a green light. The submarine construction program will be separate from the national shipbuilding strategy because no shipyards in Canada currently have the capacity or the technology to build sophisticated subsurface vessels. Now, why we don't have those sophisticated subsurface vessels, China can do it. Korea can do it. North Korea can do it. There's all kinds of places in the world that have submarines. We are surrounded by water, and we have all of the stuff in this country that they use to build those surface sub pens in the world. So why are we buying them from somebody else? Why are Canadians not getting hired to make those things? Why are we not currently right now saying, you know what? First, we're going to start by building them in Canada. Then we're also at the same time going to put people to work making this submarine base. I don't care if you put it in Lake Ontario. Put it somewhere. Build the thing, and let's get this going. Let's keep these dollars in Canada. But of course, it's Justin Trudeau, and it's the Liberal Party, and they just love to make everybody think that they're doing something that they're not. They would care more about what the United States thinks about their reputation than they do about the Canadian voting public. And they care more about giving jobs to people that are not qualified to work on submarines than they do about making sure we have a staff of people, a cadre of people who are capable and competent about not only building the submarines, but building the weapons that go in the submarines, that build the engines that drive the submarines, that build the software that operate all of those equipment that goes inside the submarines, that train the men and women that go inside the submarines, and building the base that houses the submarine. The base says, because we need stuff on each coast. That's just my opinion on the matter. You can tell me what you think down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you next time.